In this episode of the Locked On NBA Big Board Podcast, it is our second episode of the day. And in this episode, James and I, we are going to share our thoughts on VJ Edgecombe and Nolan Traore, two guys that are projected as top 5 picks on nearly every mock, every big board, and almost with every scout that I've spoken with coming into the season. But they've had their struggles. So stay tuned to hear our thoughts. We're going to talk about maybe the root of their struggles and what they need to do to bounce back. Stay tuned. Big shout out and thank you to each and every person that has made the Locked On NBA Big Board Podcast your first listen of the day. I'm your host, Rafael Barlowe, along with my co-host, James Barlowe. And I want to let you know that this episode is sponsored by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. And I want to tell you about the Locked On newsletter. The Locked On newsletter covers your favorite team. You got to check it out. It's your favorite team. You get the ultimate one-stop team and league coverage, and it will be delivered right to your inbox every morning. So sign up today for free at lockedondaily.com. That's lockedondaily.com to start your day with the all-new and free Locked On newsletter covering your favorite team. And if you're not subscribed to the YouTube channel, please subscribe, like, share, comment, click the bell so you can be notified every time we drop an episode, because we're coming at you 5 days a week at the very minimum. And on days like today, you get 2 episodes. All right. This episode is about VJ Edgecombe and Nolan Traore. So I start off with VJ. I just wrote an article on my NBA Big Board newsletter, and I talked about the 12 freshmen that really caught my eye over the past week. It was the first weekend of college basketball. And coming into the season, I had VJ Edgecombe as a top 5 pick. Now, Edgecombe has played 2 games against ranked opponents, so he does have somewhat of a disadvantage compared to the other players in this freshman class who have feasted against directional schools, smaller opponents, but he hasn't looked good. So, James, I wanted to hear your thoughts on VJ Edgecombe and his struggles, and let me know if you think there's room to be concerned.
So there is room to be concerned because he has struggled to create for himself. And yeah, no, I'm not gonna shoot him any bail because he played well in the summer playing for the Bahamas national team, playing against professional basketball players, playing alongside NBA players. So you would think that coming to college basketball, playing against Gonzaga, playing against Arkansas, he would be better. And he hasn't played well. The athleticism, though, however, that jumps way off the screen. Like the block he had a dunk against Arkansas, or he took off on transition 2 feet. And obviously he banged on the future family man, future assistant coach of Gonzaga, Mark Few's son. But yeah, man, I'm going to say that I'm disappointed. I'm not going to give him a pass for playing 2 ranked opponents because going into this, he had a lot of hype, and for him to be averaging, 8 points a game on
7.5.
7.5 on 22% shooting, that's just not
21.7.
21.7, my fault, math major. That's just not cutting it. That's not good. Now, again, rebounding, excellent. He's making plays, 3 assists, a steal, a block and a half. But we're talking about what a lot of people project to be a top 5 pick, and he has struggled to create for himself. He did hit a couple of threes against Arkansas, but I don't necessarily think Arkansas is a good basketball team because that's another podcast episode in itself. They have talent, but they're probably going to disappoint this year. It is what it is. But yeah, VJ, he's been disappointed, man. Just going to call it like it is, Rob.
Yeah, no, you're right. Again, coming into the year, I saw him as high as number 4. I saw some people believe that he has a chance with a strong season to be in the number 1 discussion. And of course, a lot of it is based off of how well he played. And I get it. He played extremely well representing the Bahamas at the FIBA Olympic qualifiers. But so far, in 2 games, 7.5 points, 7.5 rebounds, 3 assists, but 21.7% from the floor. And he is 1 of 10 from 3. To me, he struggled creating his own shot, creating his own offense. The shot just doesn't look fluid. It just looks like there's a lot of motion to it. Now, the athleticism has popped out, like you said. He's making athletic plays. He's making the hustle plays. He's defending. There are some good things to take from his performance. However, I'm kind of torn because he's the only one that we have to judge against 2 ranked opponents. But then on the other side of it is you're projected to be a top 5 pick. You're supposed to look better. But I spoke to a scout. I was at the Mavericks game on Friday night, and this is something that was interesting to me. I was at the Mavericks game Friday night, and the Arkansas-Baylor game was at the American Airlines Center on Saturday. So there were scouts that were there. There were NBA scouts that were there to evaluate potential free agents and so on, covering the Mavs and the Suns, but they were also there in Dallas because it was a game featuring multiple NBA prospects. So I ended up sitting next to a scout who I really respect, and we were just talking about VJ. And he said that he is not surprised. And I was like, really? And he said, yeah, I'm not surprised. And he said, because VJ is an athlete. And he said, when you play with other NBA players and you're a great athlete and you're playing against teams that aren't athletic, you're going to really stand out. And he mentioned that there are times where you can go and watch a lower level D1 player. Maybe he's playing pickup with some pros. And if he's a good athlete, he's going to look good because they know how to play the right way. And they can make his athleticism pop out a little bit more because he's running up in transition and so on. And he said, now that same lower level D1 player may struggle in his own league, in his own conference, because he doesn't have those veterans that are making the right plays or making him stand out in a sense. So I thought that was pretty interesting take. I'm not down on him like he was. He was totally down on VJ as far as his production as a college player. He thinks that he is going to struggle throughout the season, but he feels like down the line, if he can put it together, he is going to be a good NBA player because there's just certain things that he can do athletically that nobody can do. And he thinks with spacing, he'll be able to get out and transition and score, and he competes. But he thought the top 5 talk was very premature. And he thought that because he looked so good playing in the FIBA qualifiers, playing on a team that had multiple NBA players, he thought that enhanced how well he looked because he was more athletic by a long shot than the teams that they played against in the qualifiers. What are your thoughts on that? I know that was long-winded. What are your thoughts on that comment?
That's very interesting, and I would tend to agree with you in the point where I'm not like out on him. It's been 2 games, and he's going to play Sam Houston. He's going to play Tarleton State. They got St. John's the 3rd week of November, which is a larger school. Then he has Connecticut in December. So he's going to have opportunities before that Connecticut game to get his confidence, to figure out things, and to look. I mean, he's going to look amazing against Sam Houston, or I hope he does against Sam Houston and Tarleton because he's a top tier athlete. But going into it, I did mention, or at least in my notes, I had him as before the season started, and even before the Olympic qualifiers, that he was a pure shooting guard in a sense where he's going to play off the ball and that he can be out of control at times. And then I know we did a podcast where I mentioned that he lacked some creativity off the dribble and he had a lower free throw rate. So in 2 games, he's getting to the line, 3 attempts a game. That's okay.
But he had 6 against Arkansas.
So he had 6 against Arkansas, which means he had an entire game against Gonzaga. And he was playing because he dunked on Homie.
Played 29 minutes. Yeah.
He played 29 minutes. He dunked on Homie when the popcorn was cold in the stands. So him not getting a foul shot attempt, him not being able to create his own attempt in that game, I mean, there are concerns, but I'm not. So is top 5 out of the question? I just don't even think that's out of the question because, like you said, he's going to do so many things that you're going to be like, you know what? I see it. I still feel like, and I mentioned it before, that he is the guy you put next to the guy. So if he is drafted by, I don't want to say Detroit, but that's the first team that came to mind. But like he would be a guy. No, you don't want to do that. But in in the perfect world, he would complement your star wing because he's gonna take that defensive matchup off of him. He's gonna be an athlete, and he's gonna be able to. I think he's still going to be able to knock down shots eventually.
You kind of touched on it. Is he being judged unfairly because he hasn't played Southern Illinois, Edwardsville, or some of these smaller schools?
Well, no, because what he showed us in the Olympic qualifiers, he set the bar extremely high for himself. It just is what it is, and this no. We're going to talk about Traore. He set the bar extremely high for himself at the Basketball Without Borders and the Global Jam, the Nike Summit. So
Nike Hoop Summit, and I mean, it was quite a few things. It was Nike Hoop
yeah,
Summit.
so it's like
It was
I'm
Adidas
not.
Next Generation, and then and FIBA. But back to Edgecombe. So I talked about it in an episode this summer, and I thought like he's in a tough spot simply because what can he do to boost his stock higher than what it was based off of how we played at FIBA? And it's not a knock on Baylor guys, but when I look at the last few Baylor prospects that have come in with a lot of hype, I feel like their draft stock has went down because they're not necessarily playing their NBA position. Keontae was playing like the 3. Now, Jeremy Sohan, I guess, is an exception. His draft stock went up. Kendall Brown, his stock plummeted. And that's not Baylor's fault by any means. But I didn't think that with Jeremy Roach and Jaden Nunn that VJ was going to get reps as a ball handler. But so far, from what I've seen, I don't know if he deserves reps.
That's what I'm saying, but that's not his strength because okay, if you look at the Nike Hoop Summit game, he was out of control. He was athletic, but he didn't shoot well, and I think he was like 7 of 17 that game. But you play him next to Buddy Hield, you play him next to Eric Gordon, and then you got DeAndre Ayton out there. He looked good because he wasn't the primary ball handler, and I know he did finish games in the Olympic qualifiers, and he took some and made some big shots, but like that was a lot of that still does have to do with the presence of those other guys on the court. So, and even then, if VJ Edgecombe, prior to him playing like trash these first 2 games, if you'd have told me he were to put up 16, 6, and 2 this season and shoot 34% from the 3-point line and wow you with his athleticism, I would have told you he was going to be a top 5 pick. He can still do that.
I think he can, but I think there's some guys that are on his heels. All right, when we return, we got to talk about Nolan Traore, another guy that is projected to be a top 5 pick, but his performances this season have been up and down. Talk about pure roller coaster. James and I are going to share our thoughts on Traore's performance. But before we get into the second segment, let's talk about FanDuel, which is America's #1 sports book. And you can tackle the NFL action with FanDuel because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL, and it is all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game and you want to check out the latest stats or view live play-by-play and so much more, it's on the same page where you placed your bets. So just visit FanDuel.com to join today. And you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. All right, second segment, Nolan Traore. We briefly touched on him a few minutes ago. French point guard, 6'4", is a very, very highly touted prospect, especially coming into the season. As we mentioned, he had a strong performance at the Nike Hoop Summit. Follow that up with a really strong performance at the Adidas Next Generation tournament. I think he had like 45 points. And if I'm not mistaken, it was against Kasparas Yakuchonis' team. And then they ended up facing the Real Madrid team in the championship game, which Real Madrid had Yegor Demin, which, after 2 games, he looks like a legitimate. Some of the comments I've had people say to me about Demin, I've had 2 people tell me I actually like him better than Cooper Flag, just because he's a 6'9" point guard. Now, I'm not here to debate that or talk about that on this episode. But anyway, I want to say this. Coming into this season, everybody I talked to had Traore over Yegor Demin. And Traore has been a mixed bag of results this year. Coming into this week, Traore threw 11 games and is split between 2 leagues. He's playing in the Basketball Champions League and he's playing in the French League. He's averaging 12 points, 36% from the floor, 30% from 3. He's averaging 5 assists and 2.8 turnovers per game. Now, I'll break it into 2. In the French League is where he's really struggling. 10.9 points, 33% from the floor, 25% from 3, 5 assists, and 3 turnovers per game. And then in the Basketball Champions League, the numbers are better. He's averaging 15 points per game. He's shooting 44% from the floor, 41% from 3, only 61% from the foul line, 5 assists, and 2.7 assists per game. But when you dig into the numbers, he's had some really strong performances, and then he's had just some rough outings. Let's just go into the French League. In the French League, he's had 3 games with 5 points or less. In this last game against Paris Basket, he finished with 3 points, 5 assists, 1 rebound, and in 21 minutes, he was 1 of 11 from the floor. Now, just the week earlier, in a game in the French League, which they won, he had 20 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, made 5 of 8 from 2, but he was 1 of 7 from 3. He's posted a 20 and 10 game. And then in the Champions League, he had 27 points in his first outing, 27 points, 5 assists. He was 5 of 8 from inside the arc, made 4 out of his 10 threes. And then in the other Champions League games, he had 11 points where he struggled, and then 7 points. So he's been up and down. The 3 games in the Champions League look good, but they're heavily boosted on the first game where he scored 27 points. All right, I said a mouthful there. What are your thoughts on Traore's struggles?
I think that they are concerning and not concerning at the same time. That makes no sense, but hear me out. He has the unfortunate disadvantage / advantage / fortunate that it works for him that he's played so many games already, right? So we've got a sample size of of the very high highs and the very low lows. Yegor Demin has played 2 games, right? Against teams that we don't think are going to be in the tournament. So, and he's played extremely well. I'm a Yegor fan. I'll show you my mock that's dropping on December 1st. I like to do things I want to be right, not first. But anyway, we have 2 games of Yegor. We have 1 game of Dylan Harper, right? And we have 2 games of Yakuchunis. And we have, but at the same time, we have plenty of games of Ben Saraf. So, with that being said, I think that there are concerns with Traore, but at the same time, he's shown flashes. I think you can say that it really is not even fair because he's 19 playing in a professional league. There are going to be inconsistencies, is what I'm trying to say. So, I'm not out on him. He's not consensus number 2 or 3 like I previously thought he would be. But that's not necessarily
consensus number 2.
I liked him more than Ace Bailey going into the draft. I'm not talking about since Yegor. I had Yegor probably 13 before. He's not 13 anymore. He's got a single digit next to his name, right? So I'm just saying that we've seen a lot of film on him. He's played a lot of games, and the highs and the super high highs are great, and the lows are low. But because we've only seen these other guys only a handful of times, I feel like there is just so much more data on Traore struggling than it is those guys playing well or not playing well. So it's like we're going to judge him differently. I still really like him, but I do have concerns.
All right, what are their concerns?
So the finishing, he's at 50% finishing at the rim. That needs to be better. I think it will improve with NBA spacing, but at the same, in the jump shot is concerning, but it's almost some of it is shot selection. He shoots so many step back jumpers going left that I don't know if he has anything going left to
As far as
create a shot.
finishing, yeah, driving left.
Driving left. So basically, if he goes right, he's going to the basket. And even though he is 6'4", he might be a below the rim finisher. I don't even necessarily think he's an at the rim finisher, which can be concerning because, again, the height isn't the issue. The speed definitely is an issue. He may not have the vertical ability to finish at the rim, but going left, unless he has a clear path, Raf, I'm talking the runway with the sticks, he's not getting a layup. He's going to get a contested step back 3-pointer. And that's what really drops his shooting percentages, at least his pull-up jumper percentages, because he doesn't have anything going left. And really, I don't necessarily think he has too much of anything as far as creating off the dribble, because I got a friend of mine that I worked with. He played in France. They switched everything in France after a while when you can't, like, if a guard is getting to the paint, they'll just flat out switch, and the bigs are athletic. They can move. He gets a switch in France, or he's getting switches, and he's shooting step back threes. And he can't really shoot as well. But I do think long term he's going to be fine. And I think that, to make a long story less long, we see, I don't know, let's say he's played 10. We've seen 10 games of him. We've seen 2 games of the guys playing over here in the States. And it's not fair.
Yeah, that all valid points. I do think that he is somewhat being exposed a little bit as far as his predictability, because if he's going left, he's not going to the rim, and it's going to be a pull-up jumper. If he's going right, he's going to the rim. But again, the finishing at the rim hasn't been efficient. But if you just look at his career, he hasn't been a great finisher throughout his career on the youth levels. Now, I know the NBA is a totally different story. The spacing is probably going to be better. But if you're not a good finisher now, and there's time to develop it, but I do think it is concerning for a guy that is not considered to be a lights-out shooter to not be a crazy efficient or athletic finisher around the rim. So I think that he's been exposed a little bit. I definitely think that he's a big-time talent. The flashes have been there. The flashes as a playmaker have been there. Like, he led the FIBA Eurobasket in assists, but he averaged like 4.5 or 4.7 turnovers per game. We've seen him at the Adidas Next Generation tournament to where he basically dominated as a scorer. There's a lot to like about his game, but when I'm looking at what is the one thing right now that he does well, I can't figure it out, because again, the shooting has been respectable, but the shot selection impacts the shooting percentage. And the reason the shot selection or the shooting percentage is low is because he's predictable. Like, I'm pulling up some numbers. He shot 76 jump shots this year. 61 of his 76 jumpers have been off the dribble. Again, that goes into, you force him left, you know exactly what he is going to do. He's going to shoot a step back. He's shown some flashes of the ability to create space and get to his pull-up jumper. But again, it's predictable. As far as a runner, doesn't really shoot a lot of floaters. And then, like you said, at the rim, he's only hitting 50% of his shots at the rim. It's 50% on layups. And then I look at the stats. He has 1 dunk, which is, that's not an important stat, but that also shows you that he is not a crazy athletic finisher. Now, the turnovers it's some games where he looks like a advanced playmaker or decision maker, and then there's some games where it just looks like he can be sped up. Right now, the assist to turnover ratio is about 1.75. You would like it to be about 2-1, but overall, there's a reason to be concerned. All right, when we return, we're going to talk about What can they do to bounce back? Again, for VJ, we know it is extremely early. It's only 2 games, but we're going to talk about what can they do to bounce back and signs of progression that we would like to see this season. All right, before we get into the last segment, let's talk about my favorite app when it comes to purchasing tickets, and that is Game Time. And Game Time makes life so much easier if you're looking for tickets to sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. What I love about the Game Time app is that they have all-in pricing. Just toggle that feature on the app, and it will show you the total cost up front, so you don't get a surprise fee at checkout. Game Time also gives you a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. And Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference if you find a cheaper ticket, and your ticket is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. All right, last segment. What do you want to see from him this season?
What do I want to see from VJ going forward? I want to see just point blank, like raw production. 8 points a game, yeah, it's 2 games. I get it. But I had mentioned in the first segment, I want to see him in the season around 16 points, 6 rebounds, and 2 assists. I have an idea of who he is. I don't expect him to go out there and handle the ball and have all this amazing boogie and look like James Harden or even Trey Johnson at this point. But I do want to see a consistent 3-point shot, and I do want to be able to see him. I want to see him to be able to get to his spots and score. Like everything right now that he has been, I mean, it really hasn't even been a lot of points, but it's transition dunks, and it's been one spot up 3-pointer. It was a tip in, or I think there was like a cut. Like there hasn't been anything from him as far as shot creation. But at the same time, I don't necessarily think that is going to be something that I'm going to see a lot from him. But make threes. They chase you off the line, get to the basket, be an athlete. He's going to score in transition because he's such a great athlete. But understanding that, okay, like if I can't get a layup, I need to swing the ball. Like that got him into a lot of trouble in that Gonzaga game because he was over penetrating and he couldn't get by anybody. So he's going to need to understand who he is and how he's going to score. But from a production standpoint, I think that top 5 it's going to be in play for him, but I think he needs to end the season or be around a 16 points, 6 rebounds, 2 assists guy, and then continue to show you the same pops of athleticism that he has shown.
So for me, what I like to see out of him, it's not necessarily based off of numeric production, even though he does need to produce. I just want to see, does he have pace to his game? He's a phenomenal athlete, very explosive. We know that he plays hard, but what happens when he has to put the ball on the floor? Does he have enough pace to where he can stop and pop and shoot a pull-up jumper? Or is he going straight to the basket on straight line drives? We know he can finish if he gets to his launching pad, but I don't know if I see, based off of these 2 games, a lot of ability to generate his own offense, especially in the tight quarters that you get in a college basketball floor. And so I don't see like the ball handling. I don't see the ability to like really create space. Again, the jump shot looks like it's been tweaked. It just looks like there's a lot more to it than before. It's not like a quick, concise release. So I want to see that. And then the passing, even though the passing numbers have been solid so far, I haven't really seen like playmaking.
Well, I don't think he's a playmaker, though. I think he's a ball mover. There's no shame in it. I've said, I think he is a shooting guard, not a combo guard. I think he is a shooting guard. Like the ball has to be passed to him for him to score. He's not, to me, somebody that you're going to be like in pick and roll. Like, because he doesn't really have, I don't want to say he's not skilled, but he's not like a combo. You know what I'm saying? Like Trey Johnson is a combo guard to me. Handle the ball, he can put the ball on the ground, pick and roll, he can show you those things. I don't foresee that being what VJ does best.
Well, that's what some scouts said, that they thought that he had the ability to showcase that and that they wanted to see it. And so when he went to Baylor with Jeremy Roach and Jaden Nunn, I knew that he was going to have to play the 3. So I wanted to see if he got some on-ball reps. But one of the things that I've noticed, and I had it in my notes from high school, but I'm really seeing it on the college levels, I just think he's too straight up and down. He doesn't get low on his dribble. Like, he can't get to his spot. Despite being extremely fast, is because he's too straight up. I think if he were able to get lower, and you know the saying, the low man wins. I think he was able to get lower, he'd be able to have a little bit more efficiency or more. I just say he'd be a better finisher at the rim. But again, I just think he's a little too straight up. Now, as far as Traore, I want to see, man, you know, their season is already, they're already into their season. I want to see, can he be a better finisher at the rim? Can he show the ability to go left and finish with his left hand? And then can he cut down on the turnovers? Because I think he can be sped up, but he's just very predictable right now.
You know, I don't necessarily have an issue with the turnovers. I know overall he's at 2-1, which you'll take. But my biggest concern is him not being able to beat switches. He's just not dynamic enough with the ball in his hands without a screen. And it's like those French teams, from what I was seeing, once they figure you out, once that Sky report says, hey, man, this is what's going to happen, like the word is out and it's the gospel. So I don't necessarily think the habits that he has created, and again, they're so far into the season, I don't know if he'll be able to be dynamic off the and pick and roll as far as like when the team switch. I don't think that's going to happen right away, but finishing at the basket can improve the catch and shoot numbers, which aren't good either. Because I know that I had mentioned that the step back, he's shooting a lot of step back threes and he's shooting like 31% off the dribble. This season, which I think he can control, is finishing at the rim better and also knocking down the catch and shoot open threes that he has been missing.
See, I don't know if he's going to get a lot of opportunities to shoot catch and shoot threes. He's going to have the ball in his hands a lot. Right now, off the catch, he is 5 of 15, which is 33%. He is 2 of 10 on guarded catch and shoot three or jump shots, but it's going to be a heavy diet of jump shots off the dribble, which is step backs. And I think for your step back, it's supposed to be, I want to say it's supposed to be a counter move. It shouldn't be your go-to move. But then you see James Harden and Luka Doncic have made it their go-to move in a sense. But I think they know how to sometimes set it up. There is the threat of the drive. With Traore, you know, going left, it is a step back almost every single time.
So with Luka, if he steps back and you're not there, he shoots. But if he steps back and you're there, he goes really, really fast between the legs going right. And at once his shoulder is in your chest, you're cooked because that dude is wide like a refrigerator, and he'll throw the ball behind his head when the help comes. Prime Harden, his step back was, I'm lulling you to sleep because if you bite, I can go to the basket. And then when you reach, I'm going to, draw a foul. Traore's step back is almost in a sense like, dang, it's almost like Lonzo's step back in college. It's the only move I got.
Monte Ellis never went left, but he was so fast and he was such a good finisher that it was still a threat. But it's almost like Traore's is like very, very predictable.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. Like Lonzo's step back is because he couldn't beat anybody off the dribble.
Well, that wraps up this episode of the Locked On NBA Big Board Podcast. Once again, thank you for making this your first listen of the day. Let us know your thoughts. Are we overreacting with Edgecombe? Is it too early, or are there legit concerns? Before we wrap up, I want to let you know about the new Locked On newsletter, Your Favorite Team. You can check it out at lockedondaily.com. It will be delivered right to your inbox. Whatever team you support, Locked On Bulls, Lakers, Mavs, Knicks. Check out lockedondaily.com and sign up, and you will get a newsletter from your favorite team or covering your favorite team every day. Once again, it's Rafael and my brother James Barlowe, and we are out of here.